Hello, welcome to Lil's Vintage World. Today I've got a very highly requested video for you. I'm going to do my favourite Agatha Christie books of all time. So I have managed to put these in some kind of order. I was going for top 10, didn't happen. I've got 11. I couldn't narrow it down. So without further ado, let's get into this. And I have put them in order, however, somewhere it could just get a little bit blurred. But anyway, let's kick things off. So starting at number 11, I have Murder on the Orient Express. This is a Hercule Poirot mystery and is about, funnily enough, a murder that happens on the Orient Express train. What I love about this book is the ending. I love how simple it is, yet how clever it is, and it's just like, oh, why has that not been done a million times before? And it's just wonderful, and it's at the end when Poirot's in this predicament about what to do. You'll know if you've read it. It's just wonderful. I don't reread this book that often because, well, it's snow and cold, and I don't do snow and cold. So I don't reread it. I'm much more of the cosy reads, but I do absolutely love this book. It is brilliant. And if you haven't read it, you should, because it is just wonderful. But yeah, it's at number 11. I think you might be surprised that it is quite far down there, the list, but that's kind of where it sits for me. It's not one of my ultimate faves, so to speak. The next book is Lord Edgware Dies, in at number 10. This is about a man called Lord Edgware who is murdered, and the finger of suspicion instantly points to his wife, because Lord and Lady Edgware were not getting on very well. They were separated in discussion of divorce, but Lady Edgware has a load of witnesses because she was at dinner, so how on earth did she commit the murder if she did? And Poirot comes and investigates. I take this book on holiday with me every year. Well, every time I have a holiday abroad, I take this away with me and I read it by the pool, and it's just wonderful. It's quite a light Agatha Christie read, nothing too gory or dark. It's quite a light, cosy crime mystery, and that's why it's one of my favourites, because it's just a wonderful time on holiday to read. The next book, in at number 9, is a standalone, and it's the only standalone to appear on this list. On this list, I have Miss Marple, Poirot, and one standalone, and this is a standalone, and it is Crooked House. This is about an older gentleman who lives in a big house. His family are there, and he is poisoned. Finger suspicion points to his young wife, but was it her? Is she a gold digger that some of the family think she is? Wait and find out. When I was reading this book, I worked out who did it really early on, but that doesn't make any difference whatsoever because I just loved it. It is very different to Agatha Christie's usual books for who the murderer is, and as I was reading it, I worked out who it was. I was thinking, would she go down this route? And I can see why some people would absolutely hate this book, hate who it is and hate the ending and the reveal, but I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I do think it is the best standalone. Yes, And Then There Were None is her most famous, but I do think this is better. I know that's quite controversial to say, isn't it? I know. In at number 8 now, I have Hickory, Dickory, Dock. I've done a full-length review of this book for you up on my channel. This is set in student housing and students getting bumped off. I really like this book because I like any books on like student life. I know it's not usual student life to get, murdered, but hey ho. This book actually has Miss Lemon in it as well, and Miss Lemon, although in ITV's Agatha Christie's Poirot, she features quite a bit. She doesn't feature too much in the books, but she is in this one. And yeah, it's just a fun, fabulous read, and you should pick it up. So, lucky number 7, which is my favourite number, I have my first Miss Marple of the list, and that is The Murder at the Vicarage, which is the first Miss Marple, the first time we get introduced to her. The reason why this is one of my favourites is because I love the simplicity of the novel. It's about a murder that happens at a vicarage of this Colonel Prothero, who isn't very liked at all by many people in the village. So there's quite a few people that I suppose could have done it. Finger suspicion points to, his wife and then to the wife's lover and back and forth like that. But the best thing about this book is because it's so simple in plot, we get to really explore the characters. So Miss Marple and the vicar and his wife, etc., etc., all the villagers, but also, and most importantly, St Mary Mead itself, and the village itself is a character, and is just absolutely wonderful. And you can see why Miss Marple is the way she is throughout her other books, and it's just wonderful, wonderfully simple, and just it's a brilliant, brilliant read. So, at number 6, a book that I've also done a review of. I've done a review of quite a few of these later ones here. I have Peril at End House. This is a Poirot novel and is about this woman called Nick Buckley, who's had attempts made on her life. You know, these kind of accident things that she just said, oh, I've just brushed it off, it's an accident. It's not an accident. There are attempts being made on her life, and Poirot goes in and investigates. This is one with Poirot and Hastings, and I absolutely adore it. I think it's just so wonderful. It's set by the seaside, and it's just a lovely read. It's so good. The reveal is brilliant, and it's just perfect. It's just a good, juicy, cozy crime mystery that everyone should read, and it's actually quite underappreciated, I think, for Agatha Christie's work. I don't hear many people talking about Peril at End House, but I do think it's spot on. So the next one, what are we up to? Oh, we're in top 5 now, aren't we? Top 5. Okay, starting off, number 5, I have Mrs. McGinty's Dead. I love this book. This is about a woman called Mrs. McGinty. She is a char lady. If you don't know what a char lady is, it's someone who comes in and does like the heavy work, so like the rough work, so things like cleaning floors and, you know, doing the fires and all those types of things. That's what Mrs. McGinty is. She's a char lady and she's murdered, and finger suspicion immediately points to her lodger, James Bentley, and he's tried and all this, and the case seems to kind of be closed. But then the inspector comes to Poirot and says, I've done it, but I don't think it's right, you know, something's just not quite sitting with me. So he asks Poirot to go and find out if he is right or not. You know, the inspector's, you know, very fine about being wrong. He just wants to make sure that the right person is convicted for the crime. And this book features Ariadne Oliver, and this is my favourite book with Ariadne Oliver, and I think she is a brilliant, brilliant character of Agatha Christie. She's so funny, bohemian writer, and she's just wonderful. If you haven't read any books featuring Ariadne Oliver, you need to read it because she's just so fun. She's just perfection. This is my favourite of hers with her in, but she's been in some others, particularly the later ones. So she's in like Cards on the Table, Third Girl, Elephants Can Remember, Dead Folly. She's wonderful, but this is my favourite with her in. It's just a great book. This book itself I have read far too many times, and actually somewhere in here the pages are falling out, which is great, isn't it? Not. Anyway, now, final 4. Now, these final 4 are where the lines get a bit blurred. And, you know, I'd say the others, yes, that's pretty much where I'd put them most of the time. However, these final 4 are a bit tricky with me because I love them all pretty equally, and I think it just depends on which mood I'm in to where they would actually place. So sometimes what I put in 4th I would actually say is my favourite book, and, you know, vice versa with the others. So it depends on my mood, but most of the time ish this is the order, most of the time speaking. So at number 4 I have Curtain, Poirot's last case. So this is the last case with Poirot in. We are back at Styles, and we are back to Hastings narrating this book. This is Poirot's last case. Poirot ends here. He dies. That's not a spoiler because his death was an obituary in the New York Times. He dies, and it is the end. Agatha Christie wrote this, I think it was in the 40s she wrote this, and then she locked it away until after her death in the 70s. This is wonderful, and it has a completely different sort of murderer in it, and it is just fabulous. The best bit about this book isn't the solving of the case in a way, it's the rounding everything up, and it's just absolutely magnificent. I haven't read this book many times. I think I've read it about twice-ish, maybe 3 times at a push, because I well up when I read this, and I get to the kind of like the last third of this book, and it just hits me because Hastings is narrating it, but it's Poirot telling the last bit of the story, and it's just, oh, it really hits me. I also can't watch the ITV Agatha Christie's Poirot featuring Dave Suchet as Poirot and Hugh Fraser as Captain Hastings, because I do cry whenever I see that. I do think that is a great adaptation of this book. But yes, this is my number 4, but sometimes it's my number 1. I think it's wonderful, and you should definitely read it. Although I would say wait until the end to read it. I did, and I loved it. At number 3, another Poirot, I have Sad Cypress. So this is a book which is another Poirot book, and it is about a woman called Eleanor Carlyle, who at the beginning of the book is, she's in the dock, charged with the murder of her fiance's lover. And she had the motive, she had the means, she had the opportunity, but did she do it? There's a couple of reasons why I love this book. First of all, I love how organised it is. I love how it starts in the courtroom and we come back to the courtroom at the end, and it's just wonderful. I also really like how clever the murder itself is. It's a really clever murder, and it's just brilliant. I love clever murders, and yeah, Agatha Christie, Queen of Crime, does such clever murders, and that one is wonderful. Okay, so at number 2, I have A Caribbean Mystery. This is my favourite Miss Marple book by a mile. So this book is, funny enough, set in the Caribbean. Miss Marple is in the Caribbean for her health, and there she meets this major who she gets talking to one evening, and he's chatting to her, and they end up on the topic of murderers, and he's like, oh, I collect photographs, here's a photograph of a murderer. But before he can actually show it her, he gets distracted by something, he sees something, the photograph goes away, and then he gets murdered. And of course, Miss Marple thinks, oh, maybe the murderer is here. And they are. And Miss Marple solves the case. I think this book is sheer perfection. It's everything that an Agatha Christie is kind of known for. She's known for like suspense, she's known for coziness, she's known for kind of these great lines and these great characters, and it's just perfection. The pacing of this book is absolutely marvellous. I read this every time the weather gets warm here in England. I whip out this book and I get reading it in the garden, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's a one-sitting book, or as much as I can do with England's heat, which actually last year when I was reading it, it was like 32 degrees, which meant that I kept coming in every 5 minutes. But it is just amazing, and reading it in the sun as well gives you that real kind of Caribbean feel, or as close to the Caribbean as I'm going to be in England. It's just wonderful. I also love the fact that Miss Marple is in it so much. Sometimes you get a Miss Marple book and she's actually hardly in it at all, but this one she's in it all the way through. I love how she's working it out. I love the murder itself. It's just, well, murders, there's a few. I love everything, and it's just sheer perfection, and this is just, oh, it's brilliant. And it's another book that, well, to be honest, I think most of these are probably underappreciated Agatha Christie books. I think the only big one I have in there is Murder on the Orient Express. I mean, books like Death on the Nile and Then There Were None, I think, are very hyped books and certainly deserve their hype. But I do think some of her other books are better, and I just get more enjoyment from them. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling and give you my favourite Agatha Christie book of all time. If you know me and you've watched my channel for a long time, you probably know this already. You can probably work it out if you can. Leave it in the comments section now, and you can play along at home. Anyway, my favourite Agatha Christie book of all time, usually, but not always the case, is Five Little Pigs. I have done a review of this book already on my channel, which I'll leave for you up there. This is about a young woman called Caroline Crail who comes to Poirot and says, I am Caroline Crail. I'm the daughter of Amyas and Caroline Crail. Her mother had the same name. My father was murdered and my mother was convicted of this crime. She is innocent. Can you go back and find out what really happened? And Poirot does, and he goes back and he talks to these 5 little pigs, the 5 key witnesses of the crime, to find out what really happened. Now, this book, I get probably the most chat about actually in the comment section, and you guys talking to me, which I absolutely love because it's my favourite. And a lot of you say, oh, I don't get this book, I don't understand it, I think a lot of people struggle with this book because you are getting the same story 5 times over, aren't you? Well, you're actually getting a bit more because you go and talk to like other people at the beginning as well. You go and talk to the people involved in the court. But it's just brilliant. If you like books that are really slow and not a lot happens, you will like this book. I know, really selling it. It is just, it's wonderful. The best thing about this book is how this book makes me feel. This book makes me feel something that no Agatha Christie book has ever done before, and no, golden age or classic crime has ever done, which is the victims follow you. You know how sometimes you watch a documentary and in the back of your mind you're thinking of the victims? That's what I'm thinking of here, even though this is Agatha Christie, this is a work of fiction. But in my head, all I'm thinking of is Amyas and Caroline Crail. It's almost like they're following you like little shadows over your shoulder, and they're watching you, reading, talking to these witnesses about what really happened to the murder of Amyas Crail. And it's just wonderful. If you do struggle with this book, I would say go and watch the ITV adaptation starring David Suchet, which I think tackles it really sensitively, and is really good. I think the best part about this book is how it makes me feel is the ending, the sheer brutality of the ending. I can't give it away, but right at the end, it hits you with like this. It's so blunt and to the point, and it's just bang, done, and it's just, you're left being like, oh, sassy, and it's brilliant. It's so good, and yeah, I can't give it away because it would spoil it, but it's brilliant. So yeah, those are my favourite Agatha Christie books of all time. I know a lot of you have been asking me to do this for quite a while, so there we go. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please chat to me in the comments below about anything to do with Agatha Christie at all. And I would love to know what you thought of this list. If you're surprised by this list at all, or if you thought, oh yeah, I could guess every single one of them. If you can read me like an open book, I would love to know. Also, if you have any questions in regards to Agatha Christie, please leave them in the comment section, and if I've got enough, I might do a little Agatha Christie Q&A or something. So yes, that's it for this video. Take care, and I shall see you soon for the next one. Bye for now.